Thank you so much for taking the time out to be interviewed for Black Girls Learn Languages.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So I'm going to be looking over to my questions to ask
Okay.
you.
Okay.
The first question I wanted to ask a little bit about, just you, is your name, your location, and your heritage.
Yes. My name is Jamila. I'm located in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, the DMV. But I'm originally from Hartford, Connecticut. And my background, my parents, mother, father are both Black folks from the United States. But I also have Afro-Colombian and Trinidadian family. So by extension, but I tell everybody I got good old Southern sharecropping Southern roots.
All right, I'm gonna have to use that. Good old.
That's what's in my blood. But I'm still a Black citizen. I'm still a Black citizen of the world. But the U.S. is what's in my blood.
Right. I feel you on that one. All right. And so, what's your native language or languages?
My native language is English. I grew up
Okay.
speaking English. I didn't learn another language fluently until 20.
Okay. All right. And then tell me about what you're doing professionally. Tell basically specifically about Jamii Linguists and the work that you're doing.
Okay. So Jamii Linguists, Jamii is in Swahili, it can be translated as community. And so Jamii and linguist is, linguist. So Jamii Linguist is two-part. It's one part consultancy where I work with organizations around issues of language justice and creating change in more than one language, how they can implement interpreting, translation, and also language learning to build out their multilingual communications plans. I do that for small businesses too. So for mission-driven folks who want to create change and improve their community, I don't care what they're doing or how they're doing it. I help them do it in more than one language. And I also have what we launched in 2017, the Language Diaspora program, which is my baby. And it's exclusively for promoting language learning in the African diaspora. And so I focus there on language coaching and supporting people who want to learn language in what I say a Black-centric kind of way. So when they learn language, and even if it's a person who's non-Black, like if you want to learn Spanish, you're going to learn about these Black folks who speak Spanish too.
Okay. Okay.
So language coaching and language consulting.
Okay. All right, that's good. And do you have any other, besides Jamii Linguists, do you have any other ventures that you're doing or anything else that you do professionally?
Well, I'm an attorney by trade, so I do like to, register as a volunteer attorney to help with public interest law. But as far as profession and work, I lead Jamii Linguists 100%. That's how I pay my bills.
Look at that. That's amazing. I want to be like you when I grow up.
Nah, girl, I see you flowing between the German, and you're so personable, right? So when you go out, you make it so much fun. And even if I didn't speak any other languages, I'd be like, I'd want to watch you. That like, she makes it look fun. How can I do that? So.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That's so good to know. And then also, what's your level of education? So what degrees have you earned or certificates or anything like that?
So it's funny, level of education. I joke all the time with my language coaching clients, and then I'll have people who are like, oh, I want to go to law school. I'm like, well, let me see if I can talk you out of that. But but no, I encourage everyone to pursue their dreams. But as far as ROI, I definitely have gotten more of a return on investment on the fact that I learned another language more than degrees. But I have a bachelor's degree from Howard University, where I studied political science and Spanish. At Howard, I got a certificate in simultaneous interpretation, and I trained with some dope Black interpreters at the UN. One of my professors speaks like 9 languages and various forms of Arabic, and I would just sit and stare at her talk and just And when I understood her, when I didn't understand her, I'm like, I want to be you when I grow up.
Oh
You know,
my
and she would flow. She would just flow through Chinese and Arabic, and she was from Martinique or Guadeloupe. I think she specifically was from Martinique, um, but so I got my certificate in simultaneous interpretation from Howard. From there, I went to law school. I got a graduate certificate in human rights, and I also focused a little on taxation, because we make some money, we want to make sure we can keep it.
Right.
I focused a little, but it was international human rights, and then I got my law degree.
Okay. I want to be like you.
You want to have that? That's what you're saying? You want to have
No,
some
no, no. That's why I'm here right now. That's why I'm here right now with my master's degree.
I could pass you some of these degree bills.
No, thank you. Listen, I thank you. You know that's, but I'm gonna have to respectfully decline.
Understood.
But okay, well that's good to know. And the reason why I ask these questions is because I know it's like the intro doesn't really have too much to do with language, but it's just because I want the community to get a feel for who you are, what you've accomplished so far, because a lot of times a lot of the people in the community, they're either in college or they have a degree already. There's a couple of people who are like, not very many, but there are some that's like school age, like high school age, but a lot of people are in college or they're pursuing something or they're working already. So when they see someone and they're like, oh, this person's from Philly like me, or this person's from Colorado like me, or this person's from DC like me, this person's the regular, degular, schmegular Black person like me. If they can do it, I can do it. So that's why I start off usually with those questions, just so people could get a feel for like your personality, what you've been through, what you've accomplished so far.
Yeah, I think that's dope that you start that way. And it is important because in the space that I'm in, like especially working with language justice and interpreting and translation, and even language learning, and I know when you scroll through the feeds and you say hashtag polyglot or whatever, you don't necessarily see a whole lot of people that look like us. And then if you do, they're not necessarily native English speakers who were born in the United States, which is a whole nother level to it and language. So that like the perspective of Black folks from the United States and language learning is often like, oh, they don't really learn languages. That's not what they do. You have to be from someplace else if you speak other languages. So I have had people say on a consistent basis, oh, you're just Black? I thought you were. And I'm like, so explain to me what just Black is. Let's run through that real quick. What does just Black mean? Like, is my Black like less Black because it's just so.
I've had that too. I even have that here in Germany because I learned German, when I was young. So I was in school and I learned German. I mean, when we were living here, and I graduated high school from here. So when I speak German, I don't have that typical harsh American accent of somebody who just learned 2 days ago. So a lot of times, like I remember in my last job when I was working in Hamburg, they were really like blown away. And like one of the guys was like, so is your dad German? And I'm just like,
yeah.
I wanted to say, do I look like my dad's German? But that, genes are funny, right? Genes are funny like, so it's like, I can't really say that. But I'm thinking to myself, why would you think my dad's German? And he's just like, is your mom German or did you have a German stepdad? Like he just couldn't fathom that I was just a regular American person that spoke German that well.
Right. Yep. Same. I get that all the time. Whether it's from language or dancing, because that's before language, dancing was my first love. So people always think I'm from whatever music I'm dancing to. And I'm like, nah, the drums just hit me.
I know.
Yeah.
That's so interesting you say that. So is there a specific dance or you just like dancing in general?
Well, no, I started training when I was 8 in a variety of traditional West African forms from all across, various countries, Guinea, and that's African pyrogrammics and those kinds of things. And then also obviously tap, jazz, modern, ballet. I definitely, I joke, I said ballet was like the vegetables of dance. It was good for you, but it just didn't feel as fun as the other stuff for me. So I didn't go the ballet route. As I got older though, and particularly when I got interested in languages, I started to fall in love with salsa. And I grew up in an area with a lot of Jamaicans, so I was always dancing to dance hall from the time I was a teenager. That's like, and you're from New York, you know, somebody put some dance hall on, and in the Northeast, it's a wrap. Like party is like, let's go. So you know, especially in the '90s dance hall and hip hop was everything.
It was.
So I grew up. So people like, are you Jamaican? I'm like, nah, just been whining for a minute. Then I have a Trini family.
Right.
You know, and they're like, or some soca comes on. They're like, oh, okay, so you have Trini fam. You know, I'm like, no, I have Trini family, but I personally am not from Trinidad. And yes, I still love soca. So it's salsa. I love salsa, which has connected to us as Black folks from the United States because of just the roots there. So when I started learning languages, I always looked for myself in the language, and I normally found myself in the music and the dance first.
Okay, that's good. That's good to see. This is another thing because there's a lot of people that like dance. I also like dance. My number one favorite form of dance is belly dance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but just so people can see, get a feel for who you are, because I mean, I'm sure people will see this and say, "Oh my God, I love to dance too. Oh my God, I'm from up north." You know, that's why I tell everybody, I'm like, if you grew up in New York tri-state area between the 80s and the 90s, you automatically from the islands. That's what I say. Automatically from the islands. That's it.
All the islands. Just the island.
People be asking, they be like, where you from? I told somebody, I was like, oh, I'm from the islands. And they were like, oh,
well, that's how they know you're not.
The islands.
Because no Caribbean people say the islands.
I'm from the islands. Yeah, I know. But I'm like, who did I hear that from? Who did I hear that from? I heard that from somebody. I was like, I'm from the island of Manhattan.
Right, the islands of Manhattan. That's funny. Hey, you know, it's an island.
New York City is island.
It's an island. Hey, I'm from you from the island, right?
The island.
The island.
Of all islands.
Of all islands, right.
All right, so now we're gonna jump into the language learning journey. So the B side. Well, actually, we was on the B side. Now we on the A side. So first thing, what opportunity or opportunities were you able to take advantage of because of your language knowledge?
Honestly, since for the past 20 years, I've been working predominantly with nonprofits around social justice stuff. So I've worked as a Spanish teacher. There have been times when I couldn't find the job, but because I spoke Spanish, I was able to find something to keep the lights on. And so a lot of that came through Spanish teaching.
Okay.
And I'm an educator, and even in I would lead workshops on know your rights and those kinds of things. But when we would do immigrant rights advocacy, LGBTQ advocacy, whenever we would do workshops around justice, around economics, and, you know, campaigns to elect different political officials, those kinds of things, working with nonprofits, we needed to do those things in more than one language. So often the nonprofits, or if I worked on a government initiative, they were hiring project managers or project directors that could speak the language. So I remember applying for a staff attorney position and getting hired as a project director for another program because they wanted someone who had legal knowledge, but they wanted someone who was fully proficient in Spanish so that they could actually work at a certain level. So I actually got a higher level position and ran a U.S. Department of Education grant and had to design like a $60 million community initiative in the grant program. They stopped funding, so we did all of that work, and they were not funding the next round, but that's a whole other thing. But we moved a lot of stuff, but really my entry into that was because they needed someone who could speak Spanish. So I honestly would say since it's 2020 now, since about 2002, pretty much everything I've done has been based on the fact that I speak another language.
Wow. Wow. Before I even go into that, I meant to ask you, what's your proudest accomplishment? It doesn't even it doesn't have to be language related, but if it is, that's great. But what's
Uh-huh.
your proudest, your most notable accomplishment to date?
Honestly, and without being too, I think for
No, be too. It's just listen,
me too.
listen. My saying is bumpy and humble. It's time to stunt. So
Okay, I
as a Black woman, you need to stunt because they always underestimate what you do anyway. So
facts.
stunt.
That's
Stop
true.
being humble.
That's
Stunt.
true.
That's what I say.
All right, I you know what? I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna receive it and sit in it. But honestly, it's founded my company because when I founded Jamii Linguists, I was in a space where I felt like what I want to do, I'm not gonna get paid what I want to get paid to do what I want to do if someone else is signing the check.
Right.
Second, if I'm working on political advocacy and economic justice, and I'm working on the issues that are most important to me, I want to
Mhm.
make sure that they're hitting my community in the way that I want to show up for my people, right?
Right.
So if you tell me I don't like the idea of being paid to work on a political campaign unless I chose the political campaign to work on. And
Right.
what if I don't really want this person to get
Right.
elected,
Right.
but you're signing my check, so now I'm here using my language skills to share information, and there's actually more information I want to give this person because I'm in more options and I want to do this in a different way. And
Mhm.
there was no place that I was gonna find the lane unless I created it myself. So I would definitely say, because language is important to me, advocacy is important to me. I don't want Black folks, any country you go to or any community you go to in the world, the Blacker it is, very often the poorer it is.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
So whether you're in the United States or whether you're in Haiti or whether you're in France, I've traveled to 15 plus countries and I've seen the same things happening with Black people from South America to Asia to Africa to Europe, everywhere, to
Yeah.
Brooklyn, Baltimore. I see the same thing happen everywhere. So for me, feeling like I've started something that can have a domino effect and a ripple effect, that makes me, and knowing that there's a lot of great people I can work with and collaborate with, and I have a spirit of collaboration as opposed to competition, I
Mhm.
feel like makes me more unique, because a lot of times you get into a space and folks, they want to like grab their little piece and then they don't want to share it with anybody because they're
Right.
afraid of competition.
Right.
And in the lane that I'm in, there's just not enough of us doing it for me to worry about competition, because we
Right.
all need to be working together to get the message out.
This is true.
Yeah. So yeah, founded my company. That's what's been dope.
Listen, that's amazing. It's people that haven't done that yet. They still talking about, they still doing they shoulda, coulda, woulda. So I could have started a company. I should have started a company. You did it and it's successful. Like, it's your bread and butter. A lot of people can't say that. I can't even say that. I don't think I've started charging for nothing yet. And I've been doing this 3 years. I know this is crazy, right? I think my career boot camp that's coming up, I think I might charge a nominal fee for that, just because I've just been putting out so much information. But what you're doing is amazing. So don't, if that's your proudest accomplishment, then be proud to the 100th power, because that's seriously, a lot of people can't do it. A lot of people can't.
It's scary. It's definitely scary, because if you don't work, you don't eat. But at the same time, it pushes me to make sure that what I do well, because I don't want someone to leave from working with me and feeling like, oh, I didn't get what I needed, or this is not what she told me we were going to do. Like, I don't do that whole, you're not going to see an Instagram ad for me saying, learn Spanish in 20 days, or like, get fluent, and, like all of those things. Like, I'm going to give you a hypnosis recording for you to listen to, and then through this special product you will magically learn Spanish just by sleeping. You know what I mean? You see all that, or you're going to sit and tap in an app for whatever and never talk to anybody, and then be confused as to why you don't understand people when they talk to you.
Right.
you know So I try to show up authentically.
And that's good because I'm not gonna lie, I don't want to be calling people out, but like I hate when people say like, "Oh, you can learn in such and such," because the thing is, yeah, you could, but is the person going to? You have to look at that person. That's an individual. That's a case by case.
Yeah.
Like for instance, has that person even touched that language before? How
Mm-hmm.
much? How much of a fundamental, like a basic ground knowledge do they know before they touch your program? Like you have
Right.
to think about this.
Right.
Or how many other languages do they know? Do they know languages from the same tree? You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
or do they not know anything? Are they monolingual and they don't know nothing from nothing? Like,
Right.
you have to consider these things before you say you can be. Yeah, you could be, but you have to think,
Right.
okay, what's
I could
like
I could
realistic?
also lose 80 pounds this year, but am I gonna go to the gym?
Oh Lord, don't even get me started. Listen, man.
That's what I tell people with so when I do the language plans, I'm like, look, I don't want my language plan to turn into your gym membership because I can give you a plan. So one caveat, I do think there's certain languages. The flip side to the okay, learn languages, this is the I've been trying to learn it for 5 years and it don't necessarily take that long. You know what I mean? So there's like if you're a native English speaker, and a lot of times I focus in on Spanish because that's my professional language, even though I teach myself French and other things. But if you're a native English speaker, you can learn Spanish in a year, even if you never studied, even if you never took no classes
Right.
in high school, you can learn it in a year. You can.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether you're going to do what you need to do so that you can learn it. And most people won't because they don't hold themselves accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I posted on my site. I think I did. I might have to talk about it again, but I was researching. I saw the Foreign Service Institute. They had a list of languages
Yep.
that you can learn in a reasonable time
Yep.
frame to where you could be fluent. You could
Yeah.
have a degree. And Spanish is like a list of
600
10 languages, like 6 months.
$600 or less.
Yeah. And then German was like a little bit, I think it was like 7 months.
800 hours.
So I was just like, wow, that's interesting that Dutch and Afrikaans, supposedly you can learn that easier as a native English speaker than German, which
Yep.
for me, I don't know. I guess for me, I don't think I could. I listen. I've been to the Netherlands twice. I'm just saying. I don't think it's good in German.
No.
I don't know what the Foreign Service Institute is on, but I don't think it's easier. But
Yeah.
okay. That's good to know. That's good to know. I always, that cooks my grits when I see those advertisements like be fluent in Spanish in 14 days. And I'm just like, okay, be fluent in one word. Like,
right. Yeah.
so, all right. And so, oh yeah. And then because you just mentioned it, what other languages do you know besides Spanish are you currently learning? And do you use those other languages as well?
Yes. So I speak probably about B1/B2 for people who care about that. French.
Okay.
So I did that. I kind of put myself through a 30-day. That's what in July when I went to France, and I put myself through my own 30-day boot camp. And
Yay.
I really, when I started, I was like fresh. Like I was barely A1 when I started, and in that time I got up to about B1 in a few weeks, and then so now I'm kind of like teeter, and it's the same thing that other people get caught up with. You're working it, you're using it, then you're not, and then you're. So I'm trying to hop back into that. So French, because Portuguese is so similar to Spanish, I'm able to read it, and I have conversations with people who talk to me in Portuguese, but then I'll talk to them in Spanish. Understand each other, which is kind of fun. So Spanish, Portuguese, French are like my main languages that I can function in. But then I can say random phrases in a dozen other languages, and like Arabic, and they get me in trouble. Like every time I meet someone who speaks another language, I ask how to say thank you because I think gratitude is a good way to connect with people. So I can say thank you in 20 languages, and so I find a way to pick up info about other languages, but I can't converse in them yet.
Yes. I think that's good. That's a very good, that gratitude is something that connects people. That's very true. Being able to say thank you in so many languages, that will take you far. That will take you farther than being able to say pendeja, because I made a video about that.
I love that post. I saw your post. You just like, is that really going to help you when you got to go to the doctor?
Yeah. And that came about because I know someone who is, she's a hair blogger, a natural hair blogger, but she's also a doctor as well. And we just were randomly talking, and she was just like, she's like, it's frustrating to no end when people come in and they can't speak, the local language that she lives, and then because she speaks multiple languages and they don't speak any of the languages she knows. So it's like, how am I supposed to diagnose you? Like, beyond you saying, pain, and, what is she supposed to do? And I was like, this is stuff people need to know, especially if you're going to be traveling. I know right now no one's going anywhere, but people who's traveling back and forth for a while, and it's like even here, I had to go to the emergency room. I mean, I could speak German, but this person came in a wheelchair, sick. I don't know what was wrong with him. He only spoke Polish. They had German, they had Spanish, they had French, they had Turkish, because there's a lot of Turkish people here in Germany. And they had some other language, but they didn't have nobody spoke Polish. So both him and the attendant couldn't speak no German, no English, no nothing. So they just walked out.
Wow. Yep. That's why I do the remote interpreting with my clients, because they have a feature where they can just dial a number and get an interpreter on the phone. But what you just said reminded me, when I went to, one of the first things that I learned in any language now is how to say the word nuts or peanuts, because I have a severe peanut allergy, like death. Like, okay. I can't smell it, I can't touch it. And when I was learning Spanish in Argentina, and I got this because of an experience in the opposite direction. In Argentina, they don't say nueces. Well, they do say nueces, but I couldn't remember the word nueces. The only thing I could remember was something I learned in Spanish class in my head, which was cacahuates, which was, right? That was the only thing I could remember for how to say peanuts or nuts from Spanish class, right? Which since then I've never used that word, and no one really uses it in a lot of parts, like I believe they use it some in Mexico and things like that. But in Argentina, she had no idea what I was talking about, and they say mani, and people don't use mani in other places that much. So I'm trying to tell her that I have this very severe allergy, and we literally had to take out a dictionary and point to some stuff, and then I'm like, this, the picture, that. She was like, oh, mommy, right? So now I was on the airplane going to France, and I'm trying to ask the flight attendant, do you serve peanuts on this plane? And my accent threw it off at the time, because I'm still working on learning. And she's like, it's like, are you saying nuts black? What are you trying to say? Oh my God. Because of how to so, and then apparently there was another word at the time that they were looking for because there's a difference between all nuts versus peanuts versus walnuts versus, right. So that was a whole thing. So that when I was on the plane, I'm like, okay, let me make sure I can say this really well. So while I'm in France, I can tell them I can't eat that. Nice. And they serve it at restaurants and stuff too. So they put it out like popcorn.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, these are things you need to know. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but like for me, I don't eat pork. So I know already, when I go to, here in Germany, I already know, I always ask, is that Schweinefleisch? Like, is it pork? Because they love to put pork in everything here. So, that's a no-brainer. But some people, for some reason, I guess they don't ever think about that. So that's something that, I discussed in my video, that you should know these things. My next question, did you ever, when you were learning Spanish or any of the languages, did you ever have a point where you were like, okay, I'm learning it, but I want to practice, but I feel embarrassed to speak? Did you ever, and if you did, how did you overcome that?
So I think yes and no. So when I first, because of my experience learning Spanish, it changed how I learned other languages. So
Mm-hmm.
I tell people the story often. I spent 15 minutes in Argentina asking for sopa to lavar mi ropa, right? So for
And what did
folks,
they think?
right? And they're looking at me like, sopa? And like,
Sofa soup, right?
correct, right. So for folks who are watching this on who don't speak Spanish, sopa sounds like it means soap. It even has all the letters SOPA, right? It looks like soap. It's like that must mean soap. And I swore that I heard some Puerto Rican in Hartford say sopa before, and I just knew they were talking about soap, right? Because that was my point of reference for
Right,
Spanish at
right,
the time. So
right.
I spent 15 minutes and I'm like, and then she's like, ay, chica, jabón, jabón. And I'm like, oh, so I can't forget how to say soap in Spanish because I spent 15 minutes asking for soup to wash my clothes, right?
No,
But,
it's
and
one
it
of
was
those.
embarrassing. It was and I felt stupid afterwards. Like, I felt like I can't believe, and I had a suite mate there who, because I was on a study abroad, that's also why I started this, because I wanted people to think about language learning without having to travel, because I realized there were people on my study abroad who were there with me for 6 months and came back not speaking a lick of Spanish because they stood around everybody and all the students and spoke English for 6 months and they didn't talk to anybody. And then me and my homegirl, we were fluent when we left because we refused to hang out with all the people who were only going to speak English. So I'm like, language learning is what you put into it. If you
Right.
if you travel, you can come back not knowing anything, or you can stay in the United States and learn a language fluently without ever going anywhere. And that experience taught me that. So it made me actually, now I look to make mistakes, because the more mistakes I make, the more opportunities I have to make a new mistake. And that's how I know I'll get better vocabulary. The one place, because my business is language, I do sometimes hesitate to say things on video and I get nervous because I don't want people to assume that if I make a grammar-based mistake, that somehow that means I'm not, fully, able to support
Mhm.
them and all of that. But then I kind of had to break myself out of that because I said, look, I don't speak grammatically corrected English on a regular basis. And if I post
Yeah.
something and I'm speaking in English and I make a mistake, I don't all of a sudden worry about whether people are going to think I'm illiterate or stupid in
Right.
English just
Right.
because I said I ain't got no time for that, right? You
Right.
know what I mean? I'm like, that's just how I speak, and I was being comfortable. So I started, especially with French. So you'll see that more with me trying to like post more and share my journey. Like, my French isn't perfect; it's flawed, right? But I know that I can communicate. So as long as I can talk to someone and I know they can understand me, then I know that I'm progressing. But I had to break myself out of that a little bit. That part still makes me nervous that
Hmm.
it's gonna be on the internet forever. People gonna say she said it wrong.
But that's how people are. It don't matter what you
Yeah,
do. I
yeah.
could post a picture, look in my absolute best I could possibly look today, and somebody's still going to say, well, her one eye looks bigger than the other. Like, somebody's always going to, and I know that one of my eyes is like, this one is like a little bit long. Like, I know, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, I don't care. Like, you know what? That was then. This is now. Like, don't let me get, I'm not going to get no surgery on my eye, but I'm just saying, don't let me get no surgery. And then we're going to say, yes, her eye was wonky 5 years ago. Now it ain't. You know what I mean? Like, people always gonna look for flaws. A wise man once said, better to be a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without one.
I know that's right.
So I always say that to myself because I'm the queen of perfectionism. So,
That's right.
don't I have to tell myself the same thing when people want to interview me and they're like, oh, let's do the interview in German, or we're gonna do this flash round in Spanish. I'm like,
Right.
like,
Right.
y'all gonna have me on the internet forever saying the wrong thing. I feel you on that. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you've come so far that that shouldn't even be a factor. But I still understand,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm the same way with German, like, I'm the same way. Um, besides that, did you have any other thing that you struggled with when it comes to when you were learning Spanish or any other language that you know?
Yeah. I think learning French, because French was the first time, because now I have a goal to teach myself a new language each year.
Okay.
So when I started teaching myself, I made the most progress teaching because I developed a system and a process for me that worked for me, and it was personalized to me,
Mhm.
right? So classes and those kinds of things weren't beneficial. And when I started teaching myself French, I the hardest thing that I realized for me, which was different than Spanish I had to work on speaking, but I could understand people really easily.
Mhm.
French, and I still do. Sometimes I struggle with the comprehension of what people are saying to me, but I found that it was really easy for me to get my flow of speaking. I didn't have that fear. And I think it'll probably be like that with every language. There'll be some languages where it seems easier for me to speak first. And then there'll be other languages where it seems easier for me to understand first. But I think that probably more times than not, getting to the point where I understand native speakers is like the part that's challenging. It's
Yeah.
still possible because you can watch a movie and you can watch videos and you can do things like that, but it's hard if in the language instruction field we call it comprehensible input. So if
Mhm.
you can't understand it's hard to motivate yourself to keep listening to something that just sounds like Charlie Brown. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so pushing past that, I think, especially in France, and was frustrating, but it felt. They always say like once you learn one language, it becomes easier to learn other ones, and I think that made me realize that how easy language learning could possibly be if I don't worry about the parts that feel hard, because eventually they won't be hard.
Right.
But it's still it's that's still not a fun phase for me though.
I don't think it's a fun phase for anybody.
Yeah.
But I have a question. So when you were in France, did you ever have moments where you was in the middle of saying something and then it just Spanish just came out?
Yes, yes, yes. So it's funny. So there was first of all, when I went, I looked for like black stuff and I looked for gay stuff because I'm like I'm gonna look for try to go be around my people, right? So an
Mhm.
Afro punk was coming up, and there was and Patrice Colors was there, I believe, for a session around arts and activism and all of that. So I decided I was going to hop my butt up in front of all these people and ask a question in French. And I posted it on IG. And when I went back, I realized I kept switching little things and saying things in Spanish, and I was trying to talk about Black people uniting our voices, and the word for voices could not come to me in French, and I said, in a notre voix, and I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted to say. You know what I mean? But I didn't realize I did it until I went back and watched the video. Um, but so it even like I was at a restaurant and I wanted my meat cooked really good. And so whenever I would say bien, because it looks just like Spanish, I would always say bien. I'm like, oh, like bien, bien. And I'm like, wait, I should not be saying the end right.
Yeah.
Like bien, bien, quick. And so I
Oh
would,
my.
it's more of an accent thing. I kept like speaking French with a Spanish accent, which
Mhm.
totally makes it sound wrong.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I get that. I get that definitely. I had that happen. I was just curious if it happened with you.
yep.
Um, and so you already said that you taught yourself French. You went to French for 30 days. That was your boot camp. And then you said Portuguese. Well, how did you learn Portuguese?
Portuguese was because, and so with Portuguese, it's really more that because I've been in situations and like, say if I'm doing an immigrant rights program or something like that, I'd be in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where pretty much everyone spoke Spanish, but then there might be one Brazilian sister or brother there. And when I was learning Spanish in Argentina, we went to Oh, you cut out on me. But I didn't.
Sorry.
You good.
Um, no, it's okay. My phone is it's cool. Don't worry. I got a little notification and
Parfait. Pas de problème. So I got but we went to Brazil for vacation. And so during a time that sounds so, and it was funny because I was so broke when I was in Argentina. But when I tell people these stories, I'm like, yes, we went to Brazil for. It sounds like I'm like this little, you know. I went to Argentina like I think I had saved up enough money, and this was pre GoFundMe days. And I reached out to all my family. I'm like, I'm going. I don't know how I'm gonna eat for 6 months. I got $1,000. I hope it's this. You know what I mean? But I figured it out, made my little 15 cents into $1, and we went on vacation in Brazil. And I didn't see a lot of Black folks in Argentina while I was there. So when I went to Brazil, I was just like, oh. It was so exciting to see Black people that I wanted to talk to everybody. And that was when I realized that I could understand people, even though when I went to Brazil, I had never heard a person speak Portuguese ever. I had never had a conversation. I had never taken a class. And I realized just that I could understand people because of studying Spanish. And so I've never studied Portuguese. But because of doing translations, because of working with interpreters, I'm constantly in situations where I'm exposed to it. So occasionally I'll pick up like a little book or something and read something or look for something online, but I don't study it.
Okay. Yeah, it was like that actually. I went to Lisbon, to Portugal last year. And I was nervous because I've never been to Portugal. This was my first time being in a country where I have not touched the language. Like I've been to Mexico, you know, I know Spanish, whatever. And I tried to learn Portuguese and that failed miserably. So it was kind of like that. Like I was scared. I was like, oh, because I got to the hotel, I was thinking the Radisson Blu, and it was like no Black people at all.
Right.
So I was just like, I don't know if I want to go downtown. Do I want to go downtown? And then it was so crazy because I guess the university, one of the campuses is not too far from the hotel because it was like by the airport. So I went to go get some food, and it was like Black people. Like you said, it was like, oh, yes, yes, Black people. It's so good to see you. It makes you feel, you know what I mean? Like, even if you don't talk to them, it's just the presence of somebody that look like you. It makes you feel like, okay, I don't feel threatened.
Right.
You know what I mean? I feel like, okay, clearly it's Black people friendly around here because there's millions of them. So,
right.
Because you go somewhere and you're the only Black face, you start like, okay, so am I going to see, you know what I mean? Am I going to see some white hats, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know.
But and that's the thing that for Black folks from the United States, I think if you realize, folks, when we travel, people don't assume we're from the United States because the external image of the United States is white. So they associate white people with being from the United States, and they assume that, like you said, your parents must be from someplace else. Where are you really from?
Right.
So it's easy to blend if you're not running around yelling in English, right? But it's easy to blend to a certain extent. Like your clothes might give you away, your hairstyle, certain things can give you away. Even how you wear your makeup sometimes can give you away culturally that you're not from there. But they don't necessarily associate you automatically with the United States.
Right.
Right. And so but in Argentina, what was hard was it was very clear that one, I wasn't from there and I couldn't blend in anywhere and I had long locks at the time. So my locks weren't long yet, but I had locks at the time. And so like they kept asking me if I was Jamaican, if I was African. I had, there were some racial situations that occurred. This woman dragged her kid down the damn city street to beg on they call buses colectivos there, beg on the bus window and ask me if I was from Africa or Jamaica. She's like, "Sos de Africa or Jamaica?" And I'm like, did
What?
you just really drag your kid down the street running
Wow.
up the thing to bang on the window and ask me whether I'm Jamaican or African?
You can't make it up.
Right. And so so when I went to Brazil, I'm like, ain't nobody gonna bother me. Like, and it was funny because people were like, "Oh, Brazil is dangerous." We were in Rio, Rio's dangerous. You got to be careful. Da, 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 da. But to a certain extent, as long again as if I wasn't walking down the street screaming in English, I blended. No one assumed that I was a tourist necessarily.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
feels good. That's what I like about being in areas where there are Black people. I can blend.
Right. And it is a nice um thing. But I sometimes, even if you are in areas where there's Black people, as Americans, you still kind of stick out in a way.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's
I
true.
noticed that is
It's true.
because, like, it's just, especially if you're not in a big city. Like, obviously, if I'm in a big city like Berlin or Hamburg or whatever,
Yeah.
there's plenty of girls, whatever. But like when I'm in a small town like what I'm at, and
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I'm very obvious. Americans are vain. So I'm very obviously American. I'm a very obviously something
They'll be
because
like,
they're
she
like,
got all that damn makeup on and she walking around in the country.
right, like, what are you doing, sis? What are you doing? You
Right.
know, and so, like, I've had numerous times where I met up with friends, for coffee, and they're like, "Why are you so dressed up?" I'm like, "What do you mean so dressed up? What are you talking about?" Like, I stepped outside my house, just a
Right.
special event. What do you mean?
Right.
And so, but and it's like I've had people ask me that. They're like, and this one took the cake. Some guy asked me if I was like Chinese or something. I was like, now I don't know what he was on, but I was just like, do better. Really? His wife was like, of course she's not Chinese. You're from South Africa, right? I said, well, at least you got the continent, right? At least you got that. At least you got the continent, right? But yeah, so you still kind of stand out, and then depending, because it's just different. I noticed, like, here, like, even a regular degular schmegular, like, if you don't get dressed up, I guess, whatever, what is dressed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still different. Americans, we just have a different style. Like, for
Oh
instance,
yeah.
there's this guy I met. I could tell he was American straight away. He just had, even though he was white, I had met him in Berlin, I could tell he was American. It was just his style. His
Yeah.
style, he just had this very, I guess, we that's normal in the US, but here, you would look at him and maybe say he's metrosexual, but he's not. He's just like the regular American guy, but he just obviously takes care of his appearance. And here, I don't want to say people don't do that, but it's not really that important to them. And another thing is, because he even told me, because I told him, I was like, yeah, I don't know why, but I just knew you were American. He said, yeah. He said, somebody else told me that too. They were like, oh, I knew you were American before you open your mouth. And he was like, how? And they were like, you have American teeth, because Americans will whiten their teeth in a minute. And here, no, for real, we do. We
Yeah.
have the white toothpaste and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And the thing is, for us, a lot of us are walking around like, thinking that our teeth aren't white, but actually, I'm sorry, but compared to a lot of teeth here, European teeth is a whole different set of teeth. So
Hilarious.
it's like, for real, they're just like, I was telling a friend, I was like, listen, I would never get, I told
I
her,
felt the listen coming.
I was like, listen, I would never, ever in my life get dental work here. And she was like, why? I said, because I will go to the US and pay full price before I ever let a dentist in Germany. Now, a medical procedure, yes, but
Right.
dentistry, no. And she was like, why not? I said, because they're not vain. That's number one. And number two, they're practical. They will give you a wooden set of teeth because it works. Really? So I was like, no. It's just certain things about the American culture that you can kind of tell, even if you don't know what it is.
Uh-huh.
You could kind of tell. Like I could tell, like, if I see a Black person, like, I saw somebody on campus the other day. I saw him, I already knew he was American. I already knew he was from I already knew.
That's funny.
I could just tell.
Yeah.
This is something you could tell. If he wasn't American, he was from Great Britain. You could just tell it's a different thing that we do.
That's like when I was in Argentina, and there was the one time we did see a bunch of black folks come in. We knew that they weren't from Buenos Aires, and it was a Cuban sports team they were coming and they were playing football. But the brother had on some like sequin, like red and gold sequin pants, and they were tight. And it was somebody from Argentina asked if he was like with me at my home ground. I was like, he's not from the same place. I was like, because I was like, no. I was like, so the same way you said, and he was straight. And I say this to like, like, so I'm like, I could tell there's just like a different thing, because that was a whole other thing. Like when you said metrosexual, so like even being a member of the LGBT community, there's like, I always joke and I say straight people, like gaydar for gay people is really just more stereotypes than straight people have. We just have a wider range of stereotypes to decide whether we think someone's gay or not. And then straight people have this many stereotypes to work with. And so they assume like any man who in their mind is less masculine, they're like, oh, he's probably, where if you go outside of the country, the culture of how men are, like things that men do in other countries, here people would stereotype and assume they were gay, and they're not. So this super like hyper masculine man, as I got to know him, he was very traditional and old school in terms of what he thought roles for men and women, and probably slightly homophobic, which the irony, because I'm like, if you brought them sequin plants to the United States, my brother, assumptions would be made. Assumptions would be made.
First of all, a whole lot of assumptions, like so many assumptions. When you said sequin pants, I was like, oh Lord, because you know why? Because I'm the type, I will wear that. That's why I'm like, when you said that, because I know how I am.
Right.
That's why I was like, oh, that's why I found it to be hilarious. Oh my God. I'm trying to think, have I ever seen that? I don't know.
Well, like the clothing, but nowadays, it's the style to wear tight pants. So now, even here, like, I just wearing tight pants now. So we got to switch up our stereotypes once again.
Or get rid of them. You gotta try to get rid of them.
No, I'm here for get rid of them. I'm being funny, but
I know. Yeah. Sometimes, like, because I know we do it. We all do. We're human. That's what we do.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I know. Like, you gotta. Well, I know I should. So that's why I'm like, because you always think something, and then you realize you don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
You know.
And I even get that with language, because I get mad when people forget that there are Black people who speak other languages, especially Spanish, right? Mm-hmm. Like, when someone says, oh, I'm like, there's nothing about me that doesn't look like I could be Latina, right? Nothing about me, not one thing, right? You might say my clothing style and different things makes me, but there's no reason that my parents can't be born and raised in any country in Latin America.
Right.
So I don't assume that just because someone's dark skinned that, my daughter's father, he's Colombian, Afro-Colombian, he black. And everybody always, like, when my daughter was younger, she's 12 now. Like, I remember going out and someone asking him where he learned Spanish, because he was speaking in Spanish.
Oh my gosh!
From my mother. You know what I mean? So and there was this really, really thick accent, he says, from my mother, right? You know what I mean? Like, I grew up with my parents, like, and so watching someone ask him where he learned Spanish made me a little more like, when people ask me where I'm from, I don't automatically answer, because I just want to unpack that with them a little bit. Because I'm like, but then I, like you said, getting rid of stereotypes, I find myself doing the same thing when I see someone who looks really white, and then all of a sudden, like, they break out in fluent Spanish with an accent, and I'm like, all right, Jamila, check yourself. Just because they're blonde and blue eyes doesn't mean they can't be Latina.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
Um, I have 3 more questions.
Okay.
The next question, which I guess I already know the answer, but I still want to hear. Which one is your favorite foreign language and why?
French right now.
Really?
Yeah.
See, classic case of thinking you know something and you don't. I thought you were gonna say Spanish, but French,
Nope.
okay. What?
The reason why I say French is my favorite language is always the language I'm currently learning.
Okay.
Because I already speak Spanish. I'm already comfortable with it. So if I go out and someone is speaking in Spanish, it's like I barely listen to it. But if I hear French somewhere, I become the nosiest person in the world. I'm like you know what I mean? So French right now is the language that I'm most fascinated by. French music, French culture. I watch French choreographers on YouTube to watch the dance and all of those different things. So French is what, and it is funny because I purposely didn't learn French when I had an opportunity to in middle school, because one of the rich kids I went to private school with was like, why do you want to learn Spanish? What do you want to do? Be a maid when you grow up?
Really?
And so, yeah, and so me being who I was like, well, I don't want to learn French because that's like the racist white people language. And the irony of that, being an English speaker, right, thinking that French is, I was just like, well, there's probably some racist white people that speak my language as well.
Right.
but I associate it with like, and so for me, Spanish felt more like I felt more connected to people who spoke Spanish. So I tried to learn that when I was younger instead of French. But I didn't associate French with Black people until I got older, which is ironic because, you know, you got all these Black people who speak French. So
Right.
now learning it is, I feel like I'm getting in touch with a whole community that I purposely like was blind to as a kid. So just Francophone African culture and just the different types of French slang from different countries. And I even like learned some Lingala, which they speak in the Congo, because there was a lot of Congolese folks in France. And so I would like, I would talk to people in French, and then I'd ask them where they're from, and they're from the Congo. I'm like, oh, well, what language you speak? Oh, I speak Lingala. And then so I would walk around, I say matondo, which is thank you, in
Okay.
Lingala. And so, and as soon as I said that, when I knew someone was from the Congo, they were like you know, they were
Right.
excited that I didn't just speak to them in French. I spoke to them in their native language. So French feels like a gateway to a whole nother world right now.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm shook because I really thought you was gonna say Spanish.
No, French. Anything French when I see it online. Well, the reason why, because I help people learn Spanish right now. Like on Tuesday, I'm about to do a whole information session about my upcoming Spanish coaching program. So I talk about Spanish a lot because it's comfortable, and I know a lot about it, and that's what I've been doing for years. But it's not necessarily what fascinates me the most right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna move into the, I learned this in Spanish, penúltima.
Okay, penúltima, listo.
Yeah. Wait, so then the next one is the last one.
Uh-huh.
What are 3 tips you would offer to someone learning another language?
Number one, have a plan. Because if you're really trying to learn the language, have a plan to make it happen. Don't just so one, make sure you have a plan so that you can track your success and your progress. 2, I would say focus on input, because input precedes output. I say that to coaching clients all the time. You can't learn to say something you've never heard, and you're not going to learn to write something you've never read.
Right.
So focus on getting input, focus on listening a lot. And then 3, connect with real people. Make sure your language learning is about connecting with real people, because if your language learning doesn't have a people-centered focus, it's easy to let it go, but you're less likely to let people go when you become connected to them.
Right. That's right. That's true.
Yep. So those would be the three things.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And the last question is, how do we keep up with you on social? What's your social media
Uh,
information?
for Language Diaspora, you can follow us actually on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. The Jamii Linguists, it's JAMII_linguists with an S. For Language Diaspora and language learning, I would say the Instagram page is the best page to follow if you're interested in learning a language.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to review with me, and thank you for answering my questions. I know the people, like I said, in the community, they're going to see this and they're going to be so inspired and so encouraged and so motivated after hearing your story.
Well, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being dope and making me want to start like figuring out my German again at some point. I'm gonna have to put that on my list.
Yes, you have to. You have to come out here.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.